Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist Podcast here in 2021. My biggest goal in 2021 is to grow my bangs out.
I didn't know where that was going. Didn't expect that.
Well, I have all these little bangs, so like I get the worst postpartum hair loss, and then this time with Isla, she's like 18 months now, and I still am growing out my hair because last year one of my goals was to do a fitness competition, and I was taking so many supplements and vitamins and hair pills, and then I was like, I'm over this, and I just like stopped taking them, and my hair fell out again, and everyone's like, oh, it's because you're so lean, it's because you're fitness, it's because of muscle, and I'm like, no, I just decided I didn't want to take my vitamins anymore.
Oh, shit, really?
And they fell out not as bad, but then now I have like 3 sets of bangs. So I have like these guys, and then I have like other ones, if you can see. Like, I mean, they're getting long, but like literally every morning I'm like praying to the hair gods and like combing them over, and I'm like, oh well, you know, at least I have hair to cover my extensions, and I can still wear Natural Bay Rose, and I still feel cute. It's fine.
You look cute, though.
I'd rather have a good body and shitty hair, I decided.
We need to address something.
Yes.
All right. A week ago, Danielle and I, we came in the podcast, first one of the year, and we were talking about what our personal goals are. And I had said that mine was getting over my fear of the ocean and learning how to surf.
Well,
we already took our first lesson, guys.
We act quick.
We act quick. And I kind of want to address that along with some, not like funny stuff that happened, but I feel like you guys are really going to resonate with this.
Yeah.
And the first is how quick to start we were.
Both you and I, though, are naturally quick starts.
Yeah.
Like, we get an idea and we're like, when is this possible? Is it possible this afternoon? Should we surf this
Let's just do it. And I feel like the minute we decided that we were like, okay, no, like we're doing this, I literally started texting you, like, hey, I have a coach. I'm like, great, let's plan it this weekend. You're like, this day, this time. I'm like, that works for me. And like, it was an immediate plan.
But you know what's so weird is several years ago, Garrett wanted to learn how to surf, and we moved, like when we moved here.
Yeah.
And he never made it happen. He'd talk about how he wanted to surf. We moved closer to the water, and I finally was like, babe, I got a coach for you. And I'm the one that found his coach. And I'm like, why haven't you found, you've complained for the last 4 years that you want to surf. I'm like, you've even gone out there by yourself and flat out fell on your face. I'm like, you need a coach, you need a mentor. And I gave him a coach, and then he started surfing, and now he's obsessed with surfing.
Yeah, I can see the obsession.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I think a lot of times we have these goals, but I'm like, how bad do you want these goals?
Well, and we're just like, oh, well, it's not the right time. Maybe next week. I'll wait for I might do that. And it's literally like months have gone by and you haven't done fucking shit.
I would say too, like as women, and I mean, you probably experience this at some level, is the women, is I guess not just women, but guilt. And it's not even, it could be the mommy guilt. It could be like, I need to work guilt. It could be like, we have all these other stories that play into our mind of like, oh, I can't take time to surf, or I can't take time to work out, or I can't achieve this goal because I feel guilty in this other area of my life that this takes top priority. Only realizing like maybe if you did this fitness goal, or maybe if you did this other goal, maybe that would propel you forward in other areas in your life that aren't up to par where they should be. You know what I mean?
For sure. Even having, because I really, by the way, I took the whole weekend off. I didn't work at all.
Good for you.
I felt a little guilty, literally.
See? That's what I'm saying.
Oh, it was a little, like, and I was like, no. I'm like, I don't want to fucking work this weekend. I'm exhausted. I want to clean my house. I want to do my library. I'm going surfing. Like, I just don't want to work.
Because there's always stuff that needs to be...
Work never ends. So I was like, I'm not working this weekend. And it's so funny. I feel like I held Katie accountable because she's like, man, my husband has to work this Saturday. I go, are you working Saturday? She's like, well, and I'm like, oh, interesting,
you know what?
ma'am.
And I didn't box you guys this weekend. Did you notice that? I usually do.
No, you left the salon all fucking weekend.
Yeah, it was a good
I'm not saying it was nice. Like, it was great, but I was like, man, I didn't work all weekend. But okay, so here's the funny thing, guys. So here we are, and this will come around. There's a lesson in this, but we're at this fucking beach, and he gives us, like, we grab our boards. I've never picked up a surfboard in my life, by the way. I was winging it from, like, second one. He's like, grab your board. Let's go to the water. And I'm like, I guess that's a little hand holder right inside that board. I'm just gonna go for it. And we're like trudging these giant surfboards
What's funny
down
is like
the water.
it was a longer walk than I anticipated, and I was like, Ani, does your wrist just feel like it's gonna fall off?
I was like, oh yeah, I can't feel my fingers, but I'm not gonna say anything and be that guy. It's great. So we get to the water and he's like, here's your wetsuit, here's your wetsuit, here's your wetsuit, put it on. And I'm like trying to like suck that shit in. I was like, Jesus.
My favorite is you go, will you zip me up? I go, that's why they have this long tail on the
I'm like,
wetsuit.
I can't reach it.
You just grab it and you zip yourself up. And she's She's all, oh.
I not only could I could barely get in that wetsuit. I was literally like, is this what it feels like to wear Spanx? Because damn, like it was so tight. I couldn't zip it up. And then we're standing there. He's like, all right, stand on top of your board. Here's what's gonna happen. Don't go towards people. Don't look at people. If someone's coming at you, go under your board, dive down deep, make sure you're not hit. If you go towards someone, just bail or look away. All right, stand on your board. You're gonna lay like this, put your feet here, stand up. Let's get in the water. And I was like, son of a.
The funniest is the surf coach. His name is Coach Mo. He's South African, and he's like, all right. I'm not even trying to do a South African accent, but he's like the most chill guy ever. And I mean, he's been surfing for years. I mean, think about.
I swear to God, he was born in the water.
But think about when you're training on hair, and you're like, you just do this, and then you're like, and people are like, wait, what? And you're like, yeah, let's go. You know what I mean? Like
that's literally like I'm anticipating. Okay, we'll be out here for an hour, probably 30 minutes.
On the sand?
No, I thought the lesson would be an hour.
On the sand?
No, 30 minutes on the sand,
okay.
30 in the water. So when it was 45 seconds in the sand, I'm like, and he's like, all right, let's get in the water, paddle out. And I'm like, huh? And I'm literally like looking around and I'm like, you hide that shock on your face because everyone else is like, yeah, let's get in the water. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so here we go now. I was vastly unprepared, A, for the coldness of the water.
Oh, yeah.
And just unprepared in general because bear in mind, the biggest fear of mine in life is the ocean. And when he was like, grab your board, get in the water, I'm like, cool. Here are these fucking toddlers.
I never see you get nervous, and that was the first time.
I was exuding nervous energy.
You are so funny. You are a nervous, like, giggler. You're almost like, yeah, like.
It's great.
Yeah.
That was me.
When I'm nervous, I just like go in like the opposite mode. I'm like, everything like kind of closes in on me. I'm like, oh, I'm not
and
gonna
I
get
feel
out.
like for me, it's like I can feel the energy building up, and if I don't get it out, my hands will start shaking. And so, guys, to understand, here I am. I'm deathly afraid of the ocean, and he's like, paddle out. They're fucking, I swear to God, toddlers who are being born on surfboards, and I'm like, I'm gonna look stupid. I'm never gonna be able to stand up. Everyone's gonna look and laugh at me. For sure, I'm gonna fall and hit the rocks that he said not to hit. A shark might eat me at this point, or I'm gonna drown under these giant waves that are apparently tiny. Like every fear of mine came to the surface, and I'm like, keep it cool, it's fine. And also, my feet are numb because the water's so fucking cold. Like it was mayhem. And as we start paddling out, all of a sudden I realize I'm like, okay, this isn't that bad. I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of easier than I thought. Okay. But then I'm like, but what happens when you're gonna fall off the board? Oh my God, what if you lose the board? What if you're the only person who can't find their surfboard? What if you can't come back up? Like, I just need you guys to understand.
A lot of running stories in that.
Girl, they go in quick. As fast as I talk is also as quickly as I think, just so you guys understand. So here I am, I'm sweating because I was already freaking out. The stress is coming back.
But so I'm sweating and you're talking about it.
Yeah. So I'm just, as I feel like Danielle and I, we come across as such like confident people because we're good at what we do and we have so much repetition. Yeah. But just so you guys understand, like,
I hate sucking at something. Like, I
fucking hate sucking at something. Yeah. And I also don't like looking stupid, and here I am about to be shown up by these fucking children.
I find that is the biggest thing, and I know, like, this also pertains to life. Like, students that have been doing hair for, let's say, like 15, 20 years, I'm like, let me guess. You have your story of who you are, right? And what people think of you. And you might own a 30-chair salon or whatever it is, and you've got this high reputation. But what if what you're doing could actually work better? I'm not assuming like you're here because your life sucks, but like, what if something that you're kind of scared of, that you hold your identity as this person, if you just kind of like let go and got out of your head and stopped worrying about what people think, who could you become in doing so? You know
Absolutely.
What I mean? I think people
and letting go of that identity is terrifying. Mm-hmm. And so now here we are, we're in the water, and he's like, all right, who's going first? And I was like, Danielle, you're going first. Like, I think your sister went first.
I told my sister's actually pretty good at like water sports.
Well, and so she went first, and then he's like, who's next? I'm like, Danielle's up next. I'm like literally basically pushing these women towards the surf coach.
The funny thing is like both me and my sister, we were the first ones, and we literally caught the wave and both just like face planted right on the water.
And I was like,
and then Ani, I'm like, well, it's Ani's turn. I'm like, she's little. She doesn't know. Like, I remember the first time I wakeboarded, I literally like got right up. I'm like, oh, is this hard? I don't know. I don't get it. And I was like, she's little. She's literally gonna pop up. And she did. Like, literally, he gave her a boost. She didn't like even fall on her face. She rode that fucking wave all the way to the shore and then like fist bumped. I was like, are you serious?
I had to like just get off the board at that point.
I know.
And so as I did that, like I made sure to like get off where there was water, like all the things. And as I'm getting back out of the water, it was like, I fucking did And it was like every fear washed away. Getting out of the water or like back onto my board, which also, by the way, was a fear. I'm like, what if I'm that dumbass that can't get back on their fucking board? What if I'm like trying to help? Like, what if I have to go?
You like nailed your first wave.
Literally in my head, I was like, what if this dumb bitch has to swim back to shore to get on her board?
How is it crazy that people hold these stories of like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and this is what makes them want to do more is they have that one wave.
Yes.
They have that one moment. And even though you're not like a pro surfer, you're like,
I feel like a pro.
well, you're like, I did it. There's a sense of accomplishment where you're like, I did it. Like you were competing only with yourself in that moment. That's how I felt when I did like my fitness stuff last year. I was like, I'm not even going into this trying to compete with anyone. My only competition is myself and having to have my ass out on stage.
Well, and here's what I realized, like all those things that I was so afraid of, guys, and I will say this, it didn't help that, because I was like, oh, if it's me and Danielle, I'll look like a dumbass. It's cool. Like, I love her, she loves me. But now it's like her sister, and then Garrett, and now their kids, and like, seriously, it felt like 1,000 people at the beach, and I'm like, well, I just went from a dumbass to one to a dumbass to many. Like, this is gonna be rough. And so even in that, I realized though, every single story I had in my head, everything that was making me afraid, of the ocean, because turns out it's actually not remotely as bad as I'd ever imagined it to be, but everything that had me like, you can't do that, you're afraid, was literally only in my head.
But because you got that wave, it makes you want to do it more, huh?
Oh,
even though that's what I was saying. Like, even though you're not great, because you had some level of success, that's what drives people to be like, okay, I can do this.
And I feel like even if I hadn't had the success, the fact that once I tried, I realized that I made all of those things worse in my head. I imagined not just like, oh, it could be this. I went to such a far extreme of how bad it could. I imagined me falling off the surfboard and like cracking my head open. That's it, you're fucking dead. Like you're in the ocean took you, you're done. I went to such an extreme, but I feel like people do that. They're like, well, if I post on social media, then one person is going to see it, and then they're going to make fun of me, and then everybody's going to make fun of me, and now a joke in my salon, I'm a joke to my town, I'm a joke to my city and my state, and I can never work again.
And not only that, like you're just like letting like guilt set in, and like guilt is really the enemy. So if you allow guilt to control your emotions and dictate what you can do, you're kind of fucked. And so it's interesting. The only person that's watching us as closely as we think everyone else is watching us is us. Like, literally. And even things that you might be like, I'm so embarrassed, other people will be like, oh, good for you, you put yourself out there, like whatever, you know?
Even, and as a perfect example, I had a friend who I've known her since, dear God, since I was in like 7th grade. I've known her for most of my life at this point. She texted me the other day and she's like, do you remember when this thing happened? I was like, no. She's like, are you sure? Though I'm like, I have no, literally.
Like it was traumatic to her, but you can't
literally
remember.
have no idea what you're talking about. And she goes, never mind, maybe I made it up. I go, I don't know.
But you know what? People hold on to stories for so long.
Yes.
That's what's even crazy. Like you could see a story of somebody and be like, oh, that sucks, that's embarrassing, or sucks for them. And then like a day later, you're like, we're so consumed with our own shit. We're like, oh, yeah, I mean, I thought it was weird at the time, but now I'm moved on, I'm over it, I don't really care.
Yes.
And then they take that story and it turns into like a tsunami, and they live in this story for like years because like, what are people think about me? Oh, I feel guilty, I feel this, I feel that, and your feelings dictate the path and the next step that you choose to take in life, which is silly. Did you know, like when when I had my first daughter, I had like all of a sudden I started getting like severe anxiety and I wasn't sleeping good and I was like, oh my God, and I finally got to this place and I realized, because Garrett's like, how did you kind of like not grew out of it, but like you kind of figured it out. And I was like, I just realized if I have a major decision or something that I need to make in my life, there's always going to be anxiety towards that decision.
Yeah.
And I know if it's the right decision, if I feel like this peaceful calm, right? If I start coming up with these stories of like, oh my God, you're going to fail, you're probably going to die, your house is going to burn down, oh my God, your kid just went like that, like you almost can create that for yourself, and you find yourself going down this dark hole, right?
Can I use a surfing analogy?
Yes.
Oh, am I that guy?
Okay.
So our coach told, oh, am I Garrett? Oh my God. No, the guy, but even the surf coach said, he's like, the minute you stand up on the board, don't look down, don't look left, don't look right. If you see someone, don't look at them, because the thing that you look at is where you will aim. If you look down, you're gonna eat shit. If you're trying to avoid the person to the left and you look at the person to the left, you're gonna fucking plow right into them. That's essentially what it is. Wherever you put your thought and your intention and your sights on, you will end up going right towards that thing. So if you're fucking doom and gloom, I literally feel like Garrett, I remember when he started surfing, he'd be like, I have another surfing analogy for you. And I'm like, where the fuck is he getting these? I get it now. But really, like, it's so true. But I feel it's the fear of the what if?
Right.
And I really think it's people not wanting to look stupid, not wanting to look like a failure, not wanting to be laughed at. That keeps us like almost like paralyzed.
But everybody knows that. Like anybody who listens to this podcast, I guarantee you listen to other podcasts, you read books, and you're like, yeah, I'm in my own way, I'm out of my head, I gotta do this. Well, then fucking take some action. Like
do one thing.
Do it. Like we're not saying like, okay, guess what? Next month you're gonna create an empire and then you're gonna do this and you're gonna do this. No. It could be like something so simple and you start there and eventually you're like, oh, okay, my goal was just to like I thought I was super established. I didn't need to post on social media or whatever. I didn't want to do videos. Why would I do a video? That's super
not on brand for me.
That's not on brand for me. Like I'm not gonna do that. I'm super private. Cool, guess what? I'm super private. I'm very introverted and I've learned to be extroverted by putting myself out there and I've created an empire over the last decade because I didn't want to I didn't want to believe in those stories of who I was. And you know what? I shared this on another podcast. I'm like, the person I'm living today is the person who I always thought I was. And now it's just fun to see her shine. And so for me, that's what keeps driving me as I'm like, cool, I'll commit to like, this might hurt and I might fall on my face and I might be in my head about it and I might feel guilty, but like, fuck it. Like that's...
Well, and I feel like even the surfing for me, and I just keep coming back to it because I don't remember being so fearful or afraid of anything in such a long time. Bearing in mind, like I've spoken in front of hundreds and hundreds of people and that came like borderline second nature. I was nervous. I couldn't have given a shit less. I'm like, cool, like let's fucking do this. Yeah. But putting me in the water where really no one was paying attention to me was terrifying. I've actually never really been. I've shared the one instance where I got like taken out by a wave, and like I've never really been scared of the water, but it does make me nervous to like think about like surfing like serious waves, right? Yeah.
But I would say what's fearful for me is public speaking, honestly, and it's weird to me that I'm like, cool, I created a brand, like a national brand, where I train hundreds of thousands, I publicly speak, and I stand on stage. So, but it's just ironic, like you can create whoever you want to create for your life. Like you don't have to be stuck on those stories. And again, like it's not like I felt like I was ever in a painful place, but when I look back to who I am now versus who I was, I'm like, I don't ever want to go back to that space.
Well, and I feel like something that I didn't even realize that I'd been doing. So I've lived in California now for about 3 years, and inside of that, anytime I'd go to the beach, I would see adults, men, women, even little kids, like surfing or like boogie boarding or like doing like all those kinds of things, and I'm like, God, that looks like so much fun. Like, I wish I could do that. I'm way too afraid of the water. I'm not talented enough for that. Like, they were basically born here. It was almost like every excuse as to why they were so much better than I could and or would ever be. But then as I kept thinking about it, I'm like, God, I'm a stone's throw away from the ocean. And it's such like so disappointing and like such a bummer that I live so close, but I'm so like afraid to do anything with it when there are people that would like give an arm and a leg to be in my position. And then I almost thought, well, in a few years from now, do I still want to be this afraid of the ocean? Do I still want to be so afraid of like doing something? I'm like, no, you don't want to be that person in even 1 year.
Well, I think
fuck it.
Well, I think too, like if you want to get good at something, like you need repetition. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I don't know if my goal is really honestly, I want to like learn how to surf, but I feel like it's more your goal.
Yeah.
But in order to be good at something, like you have to commit to it like every single day. Like you would have to be out in the water at least 2 to 3 times a week minimum.
Do you know, I was looking at my schedule and I'm like, okay,
but
if I did a wash day on a Sunday, I can't do Thursday because that's my salon day, but I was literally like, could I come into work late one day, stay late another?
You could do whatever you choose to make time for. I saw this post that said it was like, I've seen, men and women work 2 jobs and then, or like work out while then going to 2 jobs or whatever it is. Like you can choose to prioritize whatever you want. And like I said, even if it's like an hour every single day, what does that set up for the rest of your day? Like you might be a different human being. Like doing
Let me tell you, Sunday I was jazzed.
That wave you rode in, I was so jealous. I was like, I face planted real hard on 2 waves and that's it. And I was like, oh, I'm so jealous. Ani gets to win today. But I was like, you need, like this was your goal. You know what I mean?
This was like my thing.
And it's little moments like that where like the bug bites you and you're like, okay, and you're like, I'm going to commit to this. And like I said, but you're going to have to give it some time. And same with business. Like you can't be like, yeah,
I posted once.
Or I'm going to post next week. Like you have to be consistent in order to get good at anything.
And also understanding you're going to be shitty for a minute and that's okay.
Right.
And there'll be days, and something that Mo, the coach, had said, he goes, because he was like, hey, that was a really great first one. He goes, but understand, you're not going to do that every time.
Yeah.
He goes, every single wave is different. Every single day is different. Right. Some days you're gonna crush it. Some days you're not. You just have to push past the shitty days. And it's the same for you guys. Some days with your marketing and your clients, you're gonna fucking crush it. Other days you're gonna be like, honestly, do I know how to do hair? Like, what the fuck happened? But those days become, I feel, less and less the more consistent that you are.
Right.
And that's what's so important.
I think, too, the artists get in their head, let's just go about, like, talking about marketing, is they're like, everything has to be like, oh, I don't like this picture. Oh, I don't like this before and after. Perfect. I don't like this transformation. And they end up going the opposite direction where they don't post anything. And I have some old photos that I've saved from, like, when I started my brand. And I'm like, okay, let me just tell you where I was at. Because I had been doing hair for 10 years. And I decided to be my self-proclaimed educator when nobody was doing that. Everybody was educating for Redken and all this. Now there's, like, a lot of individuals educating and that kind of thing. But when I started, nobody was doing this. And I look at the photos I put out on marketing, and I thought I was, like, awesome. And I'm like, that's embarrassing. Like, that's fucking embarrassing.
They're pretty bad.
They're so bad. They're so bad, but I'm so proud of the accomplishments that I've made, and looking back and being like, wow, look where I started. And I think that students really like seeing that and being like, okay, well, shit, you didn't have like these beautiful photos right out of the gate, right?
No, it
and
took
I was
work.
10 years into my fucking craft. Like, it's not like I was like, hey, I'm a rookie. Like, I thought I was good. Turns out I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So it was almost kind of like, it was so hard for me to be like, Danielle, you're not there yet. And I'm like, okay, well, where could I go?
And if whatever you're taking away, just know, you're always going to be bad at everything at first. I mean, seriously, can we go back to our first foiling and hair
You're pretty good. You're pretty good, though, your first serve. I mean, that's pretty good.
I'm just going to take it because I'm fucking stoked. But you know what? Let me tell you, I realized, like, driving home that day, I may have a bit of, like, I've never considered myself to have an addictive personality because I don't, like, but really? I feel like I don't have, but now I'm realizing, I'm like, am I a mix of an extremist and an addictive personality? Because I feel like the minute I learned about NBR, I was like sucked in and all in.
Really? I think everybody has their addictions, if you want to call them. I think a lot of people think of like addictions as like a negative term, but I'm like, no, in order to get really, really good at something, you have to get a little bit kind of crazy addicted. You got to be like that crazy person. And every hairstylist who loves doing hair, you know, you've had moments where you're like, I think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I love this shit. And it's because you get good at your craft and you become obsessed with it. And I think that's what it takes for the good to become great.
Do you know what I realized? You know how they say it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert in anything? If you practice something for 24 hours a day, it would still take you 437 days to become an expert. If you did it for 24 hours a day. So I think it's so interesting. Well, and if you only did it, I think it was 10 hours a day, you would still have to do it for, I think it was still like 2.5, you'd have to do it for 1,000 days, which was like 2.7 years.
You know what's so crazy too is I find that business owners are not consistent enough. And they'll even say, well, I've been doing this for a year. I'm like,
you might be doing it every other day for a year, like, for 10 minutes a day.
But even then, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, people's time span and what they think should get them to the top is really weird to me. Like, I'm like, you've been doing this for 1 year? Okay, call me in 3 years, then call me in 6 years, then call me in 9 years, then call me in 12. Then when you're 2 decades into your craft, give me a call. Like, it just takes time. Even like, and I keep going back to, I'm not a surf pro, but I did my fitness thing last year. And even for me, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get like my pro card, I'm gonna do this and that. And then I was like, I was lifting 5 days a week and eating clean because everything kept getting closed down. I was eating clean for like 9 months. Like, literally, I was like, I can't fucking eat any more chicken and broccoli. But what I realized, I'm like, these women that get their body to look like this, you can't physically do 2 workouts a day. Like, you have to have, your body has to recover and this kind of thing. I'm like, they're years into their craft. Like, these women are like 3 to 5 years minimum just to get their pro card, and they're consistent for 3 to 5 years putting on that kind of muscle. I'm like, can you imagine if you got that obsessed with anything, what kind of results you would have, period. Like, whether it's your business, your relationships, like whatever it is, like, you have to be at that level to get there. Like, you really do.
Well, and I feel like that's even why BMS and NBR and like the Academy became what it is, because really the people that were doing it, like in the beginning it was you, and then it was you and Garrett, and it was me, you and Garrett, like we're obsessive, like fucking psychos over it. But that's what I feel that makes a difference, because then regardless of how scared you are of something, you're so obsessed with it, you can't stop. Like you want to do it again.
You can't stop thinking about it.
No,
it's like, okay.
I woke up today and I was like, I could go surf today. I'm like, bitch, you have no wetsuit, no board, you don't even know how to get there. No, you fucking can't. But did I want to? Yes, I did.
But Ani, what's your commitment? Then I know we're getting ready to close on this. If you want, I don't know if you want to become an expert. I know you just said one of my goals is to surf. Is like, I mean, you could say, hey, I got up, I got on a board. Is that like?
No, it's not good enough now.
Okay,
No,
so you could say I accomplished my goal. I did it. Like whatever.
No.
Like what do you?
Well, now what I've realized is I can get up, but I need like I need to push like a child with a fucking with those little, what are they?
Fins.
Training wheels. A little kid on a bicycle with training wheels. They need a boost. I don't want to need a boost. I want my little arms. Do you know what I was Googling yesterday?
We needed bigger waves. Those were baby waves.
You know what I was Googling yesterday? What? How to paddle faster on a surfboard. I'm like, what was I doing wrong that I literally couldn't do it?
You could do it. If we had a little bit bigger waves, you could totally do it. Did you know when, I can't remember if it was you or Rochelle, but I was so excited for one of you guys. I'm like, yeah! And then Mo's all, Danielle! And they weren't even big waves, and I look up and I'm like, brown! And the water, I hadn't gotten in my hair wet or anything yet, and the water is so cold. I'm all, and he's like, are you okay? And it's not even, they're like baby waves.
Our feet probably could have touched.
He goes, touch the ground. I think I looked like I was drowning. I was like, but it was because the water was so cold.
Yes.
It caught me off guard. I was like, oh.
But you know what? I love what you just said, because in the beginning...
Put your feet on the ground.
Yeah. Well, and even in the beginning, my goal was literally so small. Don't be afraid of the ocean. That was my goal. But once I got out there, I was like, what the fuck were you so afraid of? Like, honestly, it's nowhere near as bad as I thought. And now I'm like, wait a minute. I already did that in one session. Okay, hold up, wait a minute.
Now what's your next goal?
I want to be able to like paddle myself onto a wave. So, and then I've already started thinking
and then
about
you're like,
that.
and then I want to learn how to carve. Okay, now
That's
I want to do.
I was thinking, I'm like, how do these fucking people
Yeah.
turn on that? But that's, I feel, we ramp something up so big in our minds that we make it this massive thing that we're never going to accomplish. But once you start, just start, you realize everything you were afraid of was literally in your own fucking head, and it's not as bad as you thought.
And you know what? Like, if I'll use a baseball analogy. If like you're somebody that's hitting home runs, like you had a consistent run of hitting a shit ton of singles. So it's like, I loved how Mo was comparing it to golf too. He's like, sometimes, and I'm like, I feel like that. Like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I should take up golf. I'm amazing.
I'm Tiger Woods.
And then there's some days I'm like, God, why am I even out here? I'm like, this is embarrassing. Are people watching? I'll just, wiggle my cute little skirt or whatever. I'm like, 'cause I suck today. So there's gonna be days where you're like, I'm off my game. Like, I'm off. And there's days that you're going to be like, I am Tiger Woods, so.
Suck it.
But I think the thing that is most important is to not let guilt or fear dictate where you're going to go. And we've said this on so many podcasts, you guys, but like, don't let a shitty moment turn into a shitty day or a shitty week or a shitty month. And the other thing that we can tell you guys is get out of your own way. Again, all this pep you up bullshit stuff doesn't mean anything if you can't just tunnel vision and go. So the thought that I want to leave you with right now is, when that thought comes up of I'm not good enough, I'm scared, I literally want you to go into some kind of meditative state and be like, no. I want you to practice that. Tell yourself no. And say that over and over again.
You might actually have to say it out loud.
Literally, there's been times where I'm like, no, no, no. And it like erases the thought out of my head. And I feel like a crazy person, and I probably am at home telling myself no.
Kids are like, me? No? You're like, no.
Did you know my daughter? This is when you know you feel a little crazy. My daughter Ruby goes, Mom, how come you always talk to yourself? I'm like, I don't talk to myself. I'm thinking out loud. And she's like, no, you always talk to yourself.
It's like a full-on conversation, Mom.
Literally, I realize I'm like, but I like to think out loud.
I know, I've received your Voxers of you thinking out loud.
So yeah, in order to get to this level of success that you want, allow yourself to be a little bit crazy and go for it.
And so guys, thank you for being here today with us. If you want to know more information about NBR and DKW Styling Academy, you can go to nbr.education. And actually, all of our public classes are going to be released within the next few weeks. We are super excited for this.
Yeah, we're pumped. So we are continuing on with 2021, and we'd love to have you guys a part of our vision, a part of our academy. And if you don't do hair and you love our podcast, don't forget to share it. And hopefully you guys find some value every single week. Again, we share it every week on Tuesdays. We try to do a new episode every week. Sometimes we get busy and we get behind, but you know what? Tune in and don't forget to share it with your friends.